Hi everyone. Today we have with us Miss Alka Upadhyay from the Tata Group. She is one of the founding members of climate change and sustainability for the Tata Group, and she's currently the Assistant Vice President with the Tata Sustainability Group of Tata Sons. She heads the environmental services and is responsible for promoting environmental sustainability across the Tata Group by driving various initiatives such as water footprint assessment, low carbon strategy, natural capital valuation, and resource productivity. She has over 22 years of experience, and I'm very excited to be speaking with her today. And thank you so much for being here, Ms. Upadhyay.
Thank you so much, Avni, for inviting me. Great to meet you. I'm quite impressed by your work, Prithvi project. So great. Looking forward to this 15-20 minutes interaction.
Thank you. So my first question for you today is that sustainability has increasingly become a buzzword and greenwashing by large companies is commonplace. So what do you have to say about realistic sustainability strategy in the corporate world and the current pace of change?
I slightly differ on what you are saying, because I believe over the last few years, more so from post 2015, I think this is the subject of sustainability, or what we call ESG, has become existential question for many sectors. So I'll just cite one example. Let's say power or utility industry. If people don't move to the renewable way, the cleaner way, the business won't be there. So I think it has somewhat become mainstream. So companies are generally moving away from so-called philanthropic, of so-called greenwashing, I would say, to real business as a part of their mainstream business strategy. I'm seeing this very much happening within our own group, and also to some extent who are progressive in this space. So I believe it's a case where companies have recognized that for their own longevity, for their long-term existence, this is a key, and they are, at least the so-called progressive companies, are including ESG as a part of their business strategy.
Okay, thank you. The next question that I have for you is that in the past, you worked in the steel industry and have a lot of experience in that field. And before now heading sustainability at the Tata Sustainability Group, which is part of one of India's largest conglomerates. So what have been your key takeaways on the circular philosophy and the on-ground realities of resource efficiency?
I'm so glad that you asked me this question, because, if I step back, any organization will be doing its best to ensure the cost of production or cost of services comes down. And resources are cost. The more you look into from the efficiency angle, the more it is leading to cost reduction. So this is a pure business driver to ensure resource efficiency, and also from the point of view of, let's say, supply security, long-term supply security. So companies have been looking into this, but much more acceleration has come over the last couple of years, more so when there have been laws which have come in, which is making companies to look at much more intimately, closely into this materials flow. For example, 2016 onwards, within India, we had waste management rules around e-waste, plastic waste. So I think from the business point of view, it was very much there. The coherent approach to looking into resource efficiency using the principles of what you just now said, circularity, has sort of accelerated. But it was very much there. The components of looking into your existing business differently, that angle, looking at opportunity for virtualization with the intent of, with the angle of digital technology, has become that much more. But resource efficiency was always on the radar, and it and will be from the point of view of cost reduction, as well as raw material security, long-term security. And a classic example, I would say, actually is what we are seeing, and if you read the headlines, is happening for auto sector because of the shortage of semiconductors. So you will see how much of the companies are affected if you don't have long-term security of certain critical materials. So I think that this was very much there, but the acceleration has come only in last few years.
Oh, that's very interesting, because even I was reading the news about how, because of semiconductors, the prices are going up. And I never thought to think of it from the aspect of resource efficiency. I always thought of it from the aspect of just a slow pace of manufacturing. But I think that's an interesting.
So I mean, just to convey that maybe what the way we look into this subject of environment is to look through the lens of just not environmental degradation, but also what we use as a natural resource. So natural resource management as well as environmental degradations are the two components of environment, I would say. So all this virgin raw material management, looking into recyclability, looking into regenerative materials, or going into virtual mode, or looking into what we do, shared mode of resources, like what we do in case of Uber or any other model, are all components of, how do we sort of improve or avoid, use of virgin extraction of the material. So all these are the different components of circular economic principles. So companies are doing it with the intent of both resource efficiency, cost reduction, and long-term security of raw materials.
Great, thank you. So my next question is, it's kind of related to what we just discussed. So a common argument to justify environmentally unethical practices is that development is not possible without a compromise to the environment, that certain development just can't take place without compromising on your natural resources. So to what extent do you think that this argument is valid? And what are the changes that you think need to be made across technological development in this context?
So, Avni, I'll go into fundamentals. There's no easy answer to this. There are some, at times, tension between environmental protection and the development. There's no denial on that. And I'll cite one very simplistic, relationship which was touted sometime in the 1970s. There is a sufficient study showing a correlation between the environmental impact, and let me call it I, which is a function of, again, I'm a disclaimer, it's a very simplistic way of putting in things, but the environmental impact is actually supposed to be a function of three things: population, the affluence of that population, and the resource efficiency of that affluence. So I is equal to PAT is what we have been sort of reading about. So obviously, if you have to sort of take care of the environmental impact, environmental degradation, or environmental damages which we are doing, you need to look into all this. And this is not a simple multiplication. There is interaction among these two. So what we are doing, and what anyone is doing in this spaces, but obviously you won't sort of look into only one component. We are looking into how do we change the development from energy intensive, environmentally degradable, to something which is much more cleaner. And I think renewable is a big way to show you what is happening in the utility and power space. But so are the opportunities in other sector as well. So for example, what we are seeing in the automobile space, moving from IC engine based on fossil fuel to the electric vehicle, assuming electricity is coming from clean and green grid. These are the transition which is happening. I don't think we will reach where we will have development at no environmental impact. That is perhaps not possible, for the simple reason that any development, any urbanization, anything will make some impact on the environment. Let's say, simple example of when you're urbanizing, you're changing the land use and land use pattern, and you have changed the environment. So if I exclude the purest route, I think there's a possibility to some extent change the impact of damage which you can do, delay the damage which you can do, courtesy the population growth, courtesy the affluent lifestyle, by using certain type of technologies and business models. So remember, I is equal to PAT. So if you sort of take care of how you keep your lifestyle. Uh, can you minimize, make it less resource intensive, less energy intensive, and change the quality of that energy and resources to something much more cleaner? Perhaps we will be avoiding damage to a large extent. So not a very simple answer. There are tensions, and only I wanted to be very pragmatic. So when you see in Mumbai what is happening in terms of development, let's say coastal road which is coming up, how do you justify that? uh, it's a development. It's supposed to take care of congestion, and Mumbai is a sprawl with 20,000 people staying per kilometer square. It's a sprawl. You need decongestion. It has its own implication and benefits, but it is coming at a certain cost of marine, perhaps life impact. So there will be some level of tension, but how do you minimize that impact is what perhaps will be the way forward. And that is why we call it sustainable production and consumption. uh, and I think this is where the world is moving, and you see this as a part of sustainable development goal number 12. So number 12 is talking about sustainable production and consumption.
Thank you. I learned a lot from that answer. My next question is, in your opinion, this is more open-ended, but in your opinion, what is the most important aspect of climate change that we as humanity need to address urgently?
So, Avni, I will say not one, I will say two, the way we are looking within our group. One is that there is already the impact seen of 1.1 degrees Celsius increase in global temperature over the last, with reference to pre-industrial era. You are seeing whatever is happening in the world in terms of extreme weather, right? As we speak, there are geographies which are very much affected because of flood or wildfire, or even snowing in certain Brazil was an example which may never happen perhaps. So because of the amount of CO2, which CO2 equivalent or greenhouse gases we have already put into the atmosphere, there will be some impact. So we need to adapt ourselves for those changes. But while we are doing this, we need to also ensure that we don't emit more. And that is precisely what is called mitigation. So I would say two-pronged approach as both economy, business, and as citizen we need to do. One is ensure that we change our lifestyle so that we don't emit more, at least become conscious if you're not able to reduce, be aware of what is our footprint like. And another is wherever we are trying to sort of create some infrastructure or some a level of, in case of corporate, if you're putting up some plant and all, be very much aware of what type of fiscal risk can come up for those assets. So I would say two-pronged approach of adaptation and mitigation both are required to deal with climate change.
Thank you. And my last question for you today is, what is your advice to young people interested in sustainable development?
Avni, what drives you? I think that is precisely what the others should be doing. So, Avni, one thing which I feel is that I'm not sure whether this is only in India, but all this topic of environment, social governance, sustainability, climate change, whatever name we say, these are real, but it's still not personalized. What I'm trying to say that I talk about climate change, but you need to make it real. People are apathetic, you have to make it real. How do you make it real? That type of awareness, education is what is required. And I believe you millennials, Gen Zs are already aware of it. Perhaps you can become, influencing mechanism for your peers, for your parents, for your grandparents, but make it real. It's real, but it's not personalized. What do I mean, Avni? If I ask everyone, including us, are we aware of our electricity bill? Are we aware of where my water is coming from in the city and where is it going? Are we aware of how my solid waste, the municipal solid waste or society waste is? These are elements of environment. So we are responsible. So something of, I would say, awareness, education, making it personalized will be what I will be expecting of all of us, just not the youngsters, for all of us. And youngsters maybe more so because they are the one whose life is sort of going to unfold in coming decades. So make it personalized. That will be what I would say, and be a responsible citizen, or what we call citizen scientist. Be aware of what is happening in and around us, and perhaps influence to the extent possible your peer group, your network.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Avneet. Thank you so much for inviting me.